In many of my videos, I had mentioned about how we're born in this world without hurt. We're born innocent. And it's not until the world gets a hold of us through people that are wounded themselves, in which causes woundedness in us. Whether it's intentional or unintentional, I mean, they have the same effect. And so, depending on what kind of woundedness that it is, whether it's abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse, rejection, sexual abuse, we start reacting from that abuse. And we can see through only a tiny knothole of our pain the situation. Depending on how we come across to people, we can live out of that hurt. In my whole life, I've dealt with the whole rejection aspect, and of course being abused, you start reacting from what people say or what people do. And so since we do that, we make it a pattern. But when we come to Jesus, He could bring that healing to those areas in our lives to where, we're not going to, He helps us to learn not to react, but to see things from His perspective. Once we ask God for healing in those areas, He teaches us a new way to respond to a certain situation. And He teaches us understanding. Now, for somebody that is not sexually abused, but lives with rejection, they can go to somebody that, whether, depending on their, abuse, whether it's sexual abuse or rejection. Let's say somebody is sexually abused. Well, somebody is going to see their situation as that person being untrusting. They're not going to be trusting of them. So that person can react from that person who was abused as that person doesn't care. Or if somebody's, lived a lifetime of rejection, they wonder why that person, is to themselves, or, they go away angry. They wonder why that person's like that. So you can react from that person who's rejected and be all ticked off with them. But I guess the purpose of this video is more or less to show us what understanding is. What are we going to do in that situation? Somebody that's been abused, are you going to go to God and listen to Him and find out how, to speak with them? Somebody that's rejected, are you going to go to God and ask how you can, speak to them? Are you going to be understanding with that person? And understanding opens the door, to really seeing where somebody's coming from. Are you willing to take the time to sit with that person? Are you willing to, put yourself out there, probably to get hurt? But in that hurt, you're by their side and you're understanding where they're coming from. You're taking the initiative that not many people will into getting to know them. And then once you get to know them, you can see why they behave the way they are. And maybe God could use you to bring healing to that person. And that's what, going to God is all about, and being understanding with someone. And I've seen a lot of people, react out of their woundedness. Sometimes maybe they can catch a hold of it and stop it, and many other times they just let it happen. and they react from it constantly. So what are we going to do in that situation if we are hurt ourselves? Are we going to go to God and say, Lord, I want this pattern to stop. Lord, I want to be understanding. You know, I want to be understanding with the person that is hurt. And, you know, I don't want to live out of my own woundedness. I want to live out of healing. So, Lord, help me when I come to a potentially rejecting circumstance to not react out of rejection, but to understand, you know, why did this person give me, you know, a bad look? Or why was, you know, my friend accepted to go to a party or whatever, and I'm not? You know, there's always a reasonable explanation of why things happen the way they are. You cannot react out of it. I recall one time of, you know, making plans with a few friends through email about going to a Holocaust museum in D.C. And so, you know, we made plans, and my friend was about to leave his house, and his dad asked where he was going. And he said that he was going to the Holocaust museum, and so his dad found out who, you know, was sending the invite, and found out that I was inviting everyone. And so his dad got all ticked off, and I guess he felt rejected. And so my friend was ticked off at his dad, you know, because his dad reacting that way. And so, you know, I ended up calling his dad, and I was trying to explain the situation, that I didn't think about asking him because, you know, I was sending the invite through email. He doesn't have an email, you know, so I didn't think about it. So I extended the invite, and he was like, no, I just made plans, which I think it was a cop-out. That is more or less, I guess you could say, a defense mechanism. You want that person to hurt as much as you feel hurt. But it's a needless hurt. There was no way that he should have felt that way because I extended the invite. It wasn't something that, like, I didn't want him there. It wasn't that way at all. And if you know somebody, then you would know that, you know, you're not that way at all. You should have known me and my character, that I'm not like that at all. I'm like that, you know, I want everyone to go, if anything. So, you know, there was no reason for him to react in such a way. But when you feel rejection or any kind of hurt, you're not thinking at that moment. You're more or less living out of that hurt and behaving out of it. So, you know, somebody with sexual abuse, I mean, what are they going to do in that situation? You know, you may be encountering somebody that you're dating, and, you know, that person you found out is not like, you know, the people of your past, and they're not like your parents or anything that may have abused you or any family members. So they put up with the slings and arrows, you know, out of your hurt, and they're willing to be understanding. So that gives you grounds to slowly take steps of trusting, but you can only do that through God's help. So what are we going to do in potentially hurtful circumstances in the future? Are we going to react out of that hurt, or are we going to ask God to help us in that situation and further circumstances in the future to not react out of hurt, but to respond? You know, to not live out of the hurt, but to live out of healing. So, you know, I just wanted to put this video forward. Thanks for watching.